Hello and welcome to our first Rise and Learn Coaching Business Accelerator preview call. I'm very happy that our first guest today is Matthew Bennett, and we have Matthew on here with us to give us just a little taste about who he is, what he can bring to the table, and what we can expect from a month that he has designed, basically. Matthew, welcome to the Accelerator community.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited, really honored that I'm the first.
What are we talking about this next month of the Accelerator community? What is the theme that we're going to be diving into as a community?
As you know, Fabian, you originally came to me and said, can we do something about social media? Because a lot of my work is about social media. However, I was thinking about that and thinking, well, first of all, I haven't gone in enough yet to the African social media usage. So I didn't really want to do that, and I don't know your coaches very well. And I thought that doing that was possibly premature. So what I would do instead is something that I've done for other groups of coaches and has gone down very, very well, is about language use and how coaches use language on any way that they communicate with their customers and in particular potential customers. So whether you're talking about your website or your social media or even emails, we're going to be looking at the words that people use in communicating what coaching is. Because I don't know about you, but one of the biggest problems I have with potential clients is explaining what coaching is and what I do. And you sort of trip over these words. And I thought we'd look at that. So that's what I thought we'd do this week, this month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that works very well because now in the previous month we have worked on our avatar, so on our ideal client. So who are we doing this for? What are our goals as coaches and as business people? And who's our target audience? Or who target audience sometimes feels a bit limiting, but who is the person that we would love to work with? Who is the person that we would almost pay to work with, right? And so
Yeah.
what you're offering us is a way to reach these people in a way that they can really take it to heart and understand it and see the value of what we're offering. Does that approach being correct?
Absolutely. You know, if your avatar is a 16-year-old girl, then you might be using TikTok. Whereas if your avatar is a CEO of a listed company, then probably you're using LinkedIn. So the method doesn't matter, but the way you're talking to them, how you're talking, what language you're using, absolutely, it completely fits into what you've been doing.
Wonderful. So why is that important? I mean, that might seem obvious kind of at first glance, but help us understand, how does that impact the other parts of our coaching business?
I think there's two elements to this. One is in a lot of coaching courses, and from what you've described about the community in particular, that lots of people will be at the beginning of their coaching career. A lot of coaching courses, you spend a lot of time coaching other coaches and people who are in that world, and they may have come from HR backgrounds or they may be very involved in self-improvement. And so you develop a language around that doesn't resonate with potentially your audience. So if you're trying to talk to people, you have to be talking in the language that they use and avoid jargon that they don't understand, or at least use jargon knowing that you're doing it consciously, and potentially explain it. So if you want to talk to people, you have to talk their language. The other thing that's important is that you want to get them. You want to pull them in. You want them to understand what you do and where you're going with your business. And it will help tap into those people to pull them into your business. A lot of what I'll be doing is a bit of a perspective shift. You know, when you're sitting in your advertised shoes, and you're reading the communications, will it resonate? Will they understand what you're talking about? And will they want to work with you? And that possibly will help the way that you think about them.
Ah, okay. So on the customer journey, on the customer life cycle, so to say, we were talking about that recently to get a little bit of a handle on the distinction between being a coach and being a business owner. what we're talking about really is the front part, right? This idea of
Absolutely.
getting somebody's attention, standing out in this sea of information, of noise, speaking like maybe you could call it a frequency on a radio, if anybody remembers what that is. If you tune into the right frequency for your ideal client, then they will get a clear signal and they will actually notice, hey, that's exactly what I want to listen to. That's exactly the kind of signal that I'm interested in, what's helping me. So it's really this front part of the journey in getting people to notice you in the first place, so you can then have them engage with your content, so you can then hopefully convince them to close, and then you can step into that coaching mindset of really working with them. So if you don't get what Matthew is offering right, chances are you'll have a lot fewer clients, very simply put.
Absolutely. You'll get loads of clients by listening to it. Yeah. And I'll give you a really tangible example. In coaching and therapy, the word drama means something very specific in that people get into drama in toxic relationships. We talk about the drama triangle. With a lot of my clients, I will stop my coaching session. I'll say, can I just teach you a little model? And I will teach them the drama triangle, because so many times people are in drama. And I'll teach them about the three parts of a drama triangle. Now, if I had said in a communication, get out of drama, then people who didn't have that conversation with me would have thought that I was talking about getting out of theatre work. And they would think, oh, well, that's nothing to do with me. I'm going to ignore that email. I'm going to ignore that TikTok. We're talking about the beginning part of the conversation when you're doing the business development, where you have to use really clear language. Later on, when you're working with someone, you can stop the conversation. You can say, a really good word to use is this. You can explain what you mean. When I say this word, this is what I mean. You're already in that conversation and you're learning from each other. So that, yeah, you're right. This is very much the beginning of the coaching cycle.
So who in particular needs this set of skills that you're talking about? Or maybe phrased differently, what are some common mistakes that you've seen people do in this area?
So if I tell you where this came from and why I started thinking about this, it might make a little bit more sense. So my background is actually in education. I used to work, first of all, as a teacher, and then I worked in the examinations world. And when I was working in exams, what I was very, very involved in was international examinations and becoming fairer in our use of language. I was particularly involved in science exams. For certain words that everyone, no matter where they came from, would understand. Calculate means calculate. But other words mean something different depending on who has taught you. And so what we did a lot of work on was pinning down what specific words meant. So, for example, what does the word describe mean? What does the word evaluate mean? Really, really clear. And that meant that we could go to China or Egypt or Thailand and say, when you read our exams, when you see these words, you'll understand. And this is because when people learn English as a second language, as you clearly have, then the nuances of first language English really matter. And what we were doing was we were trying to assess science, not English. So when you're talking about coaches, especially in Africa, where the number of languages is insanely high, I'm talking in English, you might be talking in Swahili or, anything. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that you'll understand where I'm going. And if I say, you say these words, there are these types of words, be really careful because they might mean something to someone else. Examples of that would be metaphors. Lots of coaches use the metaphors of journeys, your journey to a better life or what's the path to a better future. Does that resonate with your clients, especially though, if you're going between different languages? Think about, can I directly translate that? If you're talking to a different type of person to you, I'm getting old in the tooth and some of my metaphors might be stuck in the 1990s for all I know. When I talk about, are we using dial-up? People might be looking at me going, what on earth is that? I pick up a phone. Well, no one uses a phone that goes like this anymore. So I think it will help everyone, but in particular by thinking about the fact that you're not necessarily coaching people who are just like you. You're coaching people who are slightly different from you generally. hopefully this will open everyone's minds, particularly people who are at the beginning of their journey in coaching, particularly people who don't have the networks who are doing the referrals. Once you're deep into coaching, referrals are the thing, and you don't need to explain it to anyone else. And particularly if you're a solopreneur and you're not working in a company and, having that ability to talk to lots and lots of people at once. But even if you are, then it will help you.
Yeah, right. And then we have a lot of coaches who, at this stage in their careers, want to have coaching as a side project, as a secondary income stream, as something that they do besides a full-time job, plus career, plus family, etc. Um, so I think really leveraging our time wisely and the language that we use, maximizing the opportunity we have in front of our clients is really important because we can't spend all day in discovery calls or chemistry calls, or we want to call them, right? So we want to be really targeted in the communication, whatever the shape that might take that we put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? A proportion of my time is spent getting rid of people who cannot afford me or are not aware of what coaching is and the sort of coaching I do, and they're looking for something completely different. I don't know if you talked about sales funnels yet,
Not
but
yet.
if you've got this many people who you could potentially be coaching, you actually want to be coaching this many people. Some of this is getting rid of the people you don't want to coach because they're the wrong type of person. They can't afford you. They're the wrong business. They're the wrong niche. They need the wrong things. They actually need therapy. They don't need coaching, whatever those reasons are. This will help you to do some of that filtering.
Yeah, or the chemistry just doesn't work and they
Yeah.
sap your energy rather than giving you energy,
Mhm.
which is what coaching really does if it's done right for both
Yeah,
parties
absolutely.
involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
So without giving too much away of what exactly we'll be doing, but what can people expect when they come to your masterclass? What kind of vibe is it going to be? What do you have in store for people?
So first of all, we're going to play a game. We're going to play bingo. We'll find out whether you are aware of some of the big words that coaches use. I first developed this course for a group of coaches, and I did a survey and I looked at all of their websites and I wrote down the number of websites that use certain words, and we'll play bingo on which words you think coaches use most often. So we'll see if you're good at that. There's a slightly rude name for this sort of bingo. Let's use BS bingo as the shortened version. So we'll play BS bingo on coaching jargon.
BS stands for
Um,
belief
uh,
system, right?
Absolutely, and then and then we'll come up with four types of words that you need to be aware of. And if you know how you're using these words, and I can't give them away because otherwise it would give away a massive part of the presentation. Once you realize how words can fit into one of those four categories, then you'll use them much more wisely.
Very nice. So what if you had to, design a lesson plan and kind of submit that for accreditation or for some sort of professional points or something, what would you write in there are the learning outcomes that people take away from them from that session, from the homework that they're going to be doing afterwards?
So the learning outcomes would be to help coaches to consider the use of language in their marketing materials even, and potentially in their coaching conversations. In the longer term, I think this will help people build a brand. So an example of that, a coach I know who happens to be a career coach, his brand is based around the word fabulous. And he asks his client to find their fabulousness. And that's one of his brand words. And it may be that some of the coaches come through this and go, you know what, I'm going to pick this word because that word really resonates with me. And I'm going to use that regularly in my communications. And that would work for them. So maybe this will be about brand building too.
Yeah, absolutely, because it can be a kind of a nerve-wracking experience to think, if I want to build a business, what should be the name? What should be the logo, right? And maybe if you kind of have that word that really speaks to your core for some reason or another, then it kind of springs from there. Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, and funny you should be saying that, because I've just been in the last hour. I've just been building a new PowerPoint template based on my branding, which is Elm Coaching, and therefore it's all about trees and growth and things. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you, but also that it follows through all of these things.
What don't we know? You let us in a little bit on your background that led you towards your interest in what you're offering in this masterclass. What don't we know about you yet that we should really be aware of?
So many things. So first of all, my major business is coaching. I have a couple of coaching niches, but in this one, I'm particularly looking at people who are interested in integrating hypnotherapy and coaching. So I'm a hypnotherapist as well as a coach, and I like the different modalities, whereas coaching is very client centric and the client works it out. Hypnotherapy, it's a bit more me doing the work. But there's crossover in particular with things like metaphor. So I will listen for the metaphors that client uses in their descriptions, and then I'll integrate that in my hypnotherapy. So what else do you need to know? You need to know that my background, as I say, I started in education, but ended up in sales and marketing, as well as teaching and training. And I've worked across the only part of Africa I've worked in is Egypt, but from Egypt I've worked all the way to northern China, and I used to live in Thailand. So I've worked a lot of non-UK places, although I'm UK based now. I got stuck here for the pandemic and haven't left since. And then I work with my partner on a different area, which is about social media and helping people find their social media presence. And that again is a lot about stopping people thinking, oh, I must be on TikTok.
Mhm.
Why? I must be on Instagram and I must put out something every day on a inspirational quote. Why? Think about your clients and start with your client, and what does your client or your prospective client want, and then put that content out. So I'm sure you'll talk about social media at some point, but it's all about thinking from the client's perspective. So all of that is intertwined. Yeah, and apparently I don't sleep much because I've got lots of bits and pieces going on, lots of irons and lots of fires.
Yeah, that sounds familiar for sure. So, what, if anything, is left that you want people to know in general that we haven't touched on yet that would be helpful for people to know before they sign up for this adventure and they come play bingo and other things with us in the accelerator?
I think the biggest thing is come with an open mind. It's very useful if you come with your avatar in mind, but if you haven't worked one out, if you're new to the group, then don't worry about that. You can retrofit everything I'm talking onto that. And also, I think that the last thing I would say is that if you have got a social media presence and you have been sending out emails or communications to your potential business customers, then have a read through. And by the time you come to our session, there might be a few wry smiles, a few, oh my God, did I do that you go through. But, this is a learning process. And it's worth saying, I had a completely different coaching business when I started that I just dumped because it didn't work. I was talking to the wrong people. And this is very much an iterative process, I found. I've changed my various websites a number of times as I've spoken to people. I had some incredibly bad feedback the first time round. And it doesn't matter. A lot of this is about trying. In a way, what I'm trying to do in the session that we'll be doing together is raising awareness and getting you to think. I'm not going to be telling you anything. And you know what? You might totally disagree with me on certain things, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. You don't have to agree with me, but you know what? Come and play and see if you learn some stuff.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, not as a host or anything, but just as a student, and really looking forward to up my game and to take something really really nice and juicy way from that.
We're always learning. That's one of the things I love about coaching. Is that, you know what, it encourages us to learn and not sit back on our laurels. And it's actually why I like working with clients more than anything, is because I learn from them. I don't tell them. They're paying me to learn.
No, absolutely. I know what you mean. And the beautiful thing is our business grows when we grow. So that gives us permission and license and the obligation to invest in ourselves and to learn and to put some time aside and to really expand our mind, because then the business will follow.
Definitely.
All right, cool. Matthew, thank you so much. Looking forward to see you on the other side.
Looking forward to it, Fabian. Thanks a lot. See you then.